Welcome to the Growth Now Movement. I'm your host, Justin Shank. I'm an entrepreneur, speaker, and podcaster who years ago decided to go on a journey on how to grow in all areas of my life. What I found out was it's really a matter of focusing on the 4 pillars of life: business, relationships, spirituality, and wellness. And that's what we do here. We explore how to continuously grow in those areas, all while having a ton of fun doing it. I'm really excited you're on this journey with me. Now let's get to this week's episode. This week, I sit down with Javon Johnson. You may know Javon from the hit TV series by Tyler Perry called The Oval. But what you'll find out about him in this episode is his heart and passion, not only for his craft in theater and acting, but for helping others as well. We talk about his company, Bear Fruit Conservatory, which is a nonprofit school that provides high-quality education and career development for individuals in his hometown. We discuss what it's like working with Tyler Perry and what he's learned through life, being a lifelong student of so many things. One pleasant surprise is that we naturally had a deep discussion about spirituality and the energies in the world, and how we have to stop and listen to what we are being told by the universe more often, and how it can quickly guide us in the right direction. You are going to love Javon's energy and spirit, and this conversation really lit me up, and you're going to hear it in my voice as well. Now, before we get to that episode, I want to ask a favor of you guys. If you guys can head over to iTunes, give a 5-star rating and review. I absolutely love reading every single one of them, and I appreciate you so much. Now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with Javon Johnson. Javon, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, man. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive into your story, your journey, and really kind of all the things that you're working on right now, which is super inspiring to really impact the world in a deep way. And so let's start here. Who's Javon today? And then we'll break down how you got there.
Javon today is what when you're in this business of entertainment, I can say I'm a working actor. So I'm doing what I love to do, which ultimately a great life is when you're working, it doesn't feel like work. So I'm currently living that life right now. So and constantly trying to continue to live that life, which is a part of the struggle. But right now, that's who I am. I'm also a content creator. I like to look at opportunities to create opportunities for other people, through work, through my creations. So it's always about building dreams, identifying people who are dreamers and passionate people, and trying to help to align them with their purpose and help, we do what I can to give some direction either this way or that way. Which is a bit of a reflection of my own personal journey. So I guess that's who I am today. Yeah.
Dude, I love how you said that, identifying dreamers and helping them live that dream. And the fact that you're able to do that and be a working actor. I have friends in Hollywood. Some have made it, quote unquote, and some are, on the struggle bus. And that's a majority of the people in Hollywood and people trying to break through in the acting scene. So let's talk a little bit about your journey there first. Like when did you get bit by the acting bug? And when were you like, okay, this is going to be the path that I choose, come hell or high water?
Yeah, I don't know if there's an acting bug, man. I think I got, when I look back on things, in retrospect, and you kind of put things together, the whole cliche that nothing happens by accident, right? There's a universal thing at work here. There's a higher power at play. And you don't realize things until 10, 20 years later when you look back and say, that's why I went through that. That's why that happened. And that's why I'm here at this point, because these dots lined up, right? So I'm from Anderson, South Carolina, very small industrial textile industry, maybe nursing, things like that. Those are kind of career options. Little black boys like me, we're not talking about being on TV. We're not talking about actors. That was never part of the vernacular. We didn't talk about that. We talked about music, maybe a rapper. I actually was rapping in high school. I was performing with a live band while I was in high school, going to clubs. I wasn't even old enough to get in the club, but I was the rapper in the band. Yeah. So if we weren't talking about sports, playing football or basketball at a collegiate level, maybe possibly the pros, we were talking about music. If we weren't talking about music, we were talking about the automotive industry. We were talking about textile industry. We were talking about that regular job where we put 30, 40 years in, you get to 2 cars and your wife and your dog and your nice house, and you live the rest of your life and you retire. That was the extent of it, So right. I kind of was on a journey into this thing, unaware I was on a journey. My high school choir teacher said, you're going to college. At the time, it wasn't my aspiration to go to college. It wasn't on my radar. I was raised by my mom's side of the family. Most of them, probably highest degree might have been a high school diploma. So collegiate world wasn't even part of the conversation. It wasn't a goal. But she looked at me and she said, "You're going to college." And I said, "Really?" And she's like, "Yes. And I'm going to get you a choir scholarship." I said, "But I can't sing." But I was on the high school choir. She said, "I don't care that you can't sing. I'm getting you a scholarship." Because she had a relationship with the music department there at South Carolina State University.
Wow.
And she made it happen. Now I told my mom I'm going to college. And I went to South Carolina State University. At that point, I realized I didn't like football as a career option. I liked it playing with guys I grew up with, even though I was getting recruited for some D2 schools. I was like, I don't want to do this for the next 4 years. And if I went to the NFL, I don't want to get hit by Ray Lewis and James Arrington. I don't want these guys headhunting me. You know, I was a receiver. So I'm like, it didn't appeal to me. So I was like, that's not what I want to do. So I did. I went to South Carolina State University. I was on the choir. And then I realized I'm sitting on this choir. I don't have talent. I can't sing, you know, but I was passing the big theater building, the Henderson Davis Theater, every day. And I was looking at this building. And it was like somehow it was just calling. It was like beckoning me to come in. And eventually I said, let me go into this building. And I went to the building, long story short, gave up my music scholarship, got a theater scholarship. I became the theater president and stuck and became an actor.
Wow.
From that point on. I had, you know, played around with it a little bit with speech and debate in high school. I credit Danny Glover with being inspiration for me because I knew nothing about acting. You know, it's Anderson, South Carolina. There's no big, heavy drama program, training, that kind of thing. So I'm doing speech and debate in high school and doing a friend of mine just asked me to take up a part in his place because he dropped out on in the middle of competition season. I said, yeah, I'll do it. But we was doing a scene from Raising in the Sun. It was beneath an Oscar. I didn't know much about this. So she was like, yeah. So I became a partner. We're doing this scene and we each get adjudicated separately. And I see her scores are high and my scores are terrible. And I'm looking at her. I'm like, I'm letting this girl down. Like, I'm bad. Like, she's used to being competitive. And I'm like, but we're teammates now. And I'm like, I'm the weak link. Yeah. And so I was watching Color Purple one night. And I was looking at what Danny Glover was doing with the role of Mister. And for whatever reason, that translated to me as that's what I'm supposed to do. That's what acting is. Wow. I just committed to that. I said, that's what Danny's doing. That's how he's doing it. And I just took whatever that meant to me and I made it acting. And that year we were the first runner up. And the next year we won the state championship. So that was how I came into it all, man. Obviously, looking back on it now, I see that it was my calling. It was my purpose to be an artist and do these things. I just wasn't consciously making the decisions. I wasn't at the wheel.
I love hearing that because, you know, here you were and it was almost like whatever you were doing, you were kind of in, right? You're like, okay, well, I'm going to sing in the choir. I'm not very good, but I'll keep showing up. And clearly you showed up at a level, maybe you weren't the best singer, but you showed up at a level where your teacher saw something in you. And that brought you into college. And then as you were walking by this building, you were being drawn. And so many people ignore the thing they're being drawn to. And you were just like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to walk in there because I'm a little bit curious and I kind of suck at the singing thing. So let me see what I can do. And I love the fact that you listen to that. So what happened after college? Like, again, that's another big jump. So here's a fun fact. My sister was a drama major in college. Right. She worked at the front office of like the Shakespeare Theater in DC for like 6 months. And then she went back to college to become a teacher because she's like, this isn't for me. Because that jump from, okay, collegiate actor. Yeah, you've won some awards in that, but then to working, you know, on Tyler Perry's hit show on BET and all these other things. How did that all kind of break down? Was it that typical story of I'm moving to LA, or were you just kept put in the?
I'm not even your typical artist, man, because I still live in South Carolina. I'm still working.
When you said that, I was like, really?
Yeah, everybody does that. Like, you're in South Carolina, like, wow, you should be like. So I'm atypical in that way, you know. And I like to stay rooted. I like to stay, you know. I don't like to get caught up in losing myself and I'm in a whole nother stratosphere and where I come from is not connected. I'm not connected anymore, you know, so I always like to keep one foot at home. But a lot happened in terms of, you know, most of my journey was still spiritual. It was still spiritual and still me listening and me not being the pilot, but being a passenger on my own journey and just taking the journey. And so even with that, I started writing. You know, once I did South Carolina State University, I felt like I needed more training. I felt like I wasn't ready. So I said, I need to go get more training. So I ended up going to grad school at the University of Pittsburgh. Fortunately, I was able to go free. But went to the University of Pittsburgh primarily to just get more training, to dive deeper and to really make sure that I'm at my full potential. But in that process, I also started writing, which again was nothing on my. I never thought. I actually doubted my intellectual capacity to write anything
Wow.
that would make sense. It wasn't like I was great in English. It wasn't my biggest. Like writing wasn't my thing. But these voices came to me. These characters came to me. These stories came to me. When I took a semester off to work in Louisville, Kentucky, at a theater company, it was the first time I was isolated from South Carolina State. The state of South Carolina, my family. I was in a place by myself with no connection to the community. And I had all this time to be inside my head. And these voices started to happen. These characters started to speak. And it freaked me out because I was like, I've never experienced that. Nobody's ever talked about it. I was like, is this the part where you go crazy in life? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't talk to anybody about it because it was a phenomenal experience. And I was like, I don't know what this is. So I waited for it to go away. So it played itself out and then it went away and I thought it was done. But then it stayed with me. So I ended up writing my first play by hand in pencil, rewrote it in ink. Then I went and bought a word processor. And I remember standing in the line, having an out-of-body experience, looking at myself saying, why are you buying a word processor? And seeing myself standing at the register, like, I'm actually doing this. And that began the writing part of my career. And it was really the writing that got me kind of going while I was still a student in grad school. So I have this dual career now with writing and acting and also teaching and do a lot of things now at this point. But the entire journey for me has been that spiritual kind of, I'm pointing you in this direction. Are you going to follow? And are you going to have faith and trust that there's something at the end of this thing that's worth the while? And that's what it's been, and I've trusted it. And it has been what it needed to be up to this point.
I love that. And so it's, first of all, I had no idea the conversation was going to go in this direction. And I love that it is going in this direction. So what I talk a lot about on this show and what I teach as a speaker and with my retreats that I teach is all about the 4 pillars of life. And that's business, wellness, spirituality, and relationship, right? And if we're able to kind of figure those 4 things out, that's when we find fulfillment. That's when we find happiness. That's where we find that place where people want to be in life. And so when I hear you say, it was a spiritual journey, it was a spiritual awakening, it was a spiritual, I heard voices. I love hearing that because I have friends who have experienced, I've never heard voices. I wish I had voices telling me what to do. Maybe things would be a little bit easier at times. But I have had friends who do. And for me, spirituality, I'm a Christian, but spirituality for me at the end of the day is, look, we all have to believe there's an energy flowing around us. Absolutely. And it's all about trying to figure out how do we make sure that energy is flowing with us versus against us. And you're somebody who heard something, and I want you to dive into that if you don't mind. You're somebody who heard something and then you leaned into it and you said, cool, I'm going to move with this. And almost like a spiritual kind of experience where you're like, okay, now I'm buying a word processor. What am I doing? Or word processor. What am I doing? So tell me a little bit about what were you doing when you heard these voices? Were you doing any sort of meditation or were you just like living life?
Man, I knew nothing about none of that, man. Listen, I'm from Madison, South Carolina. It was nobody was talking about these things. Not only was I from Madison, South Carolina, I'm African American from Madison, South Carolina, so that even takes a smaller scope in terms of how limited in perspective and experience that I had at the time. So a lot of the stuff was a private journey, and it was one where I was not talking about it, but I was doing it. And then when I wrote my first script, I didn't know what to do with it, So I was working at that time. By the time I finished it, I let it go. I put it aside and didn't think about it. And then a couple of years later, I'm working in Ohio at an outdoor amphitheater, and there's 60 people in the cast. And I said, well, let me just put it in people's mailboxes and let them read it and see what they say. And I just passed the script around and got feedback. And that was my process. Like, that's how I started to learn how to write, just listening to people. Because I believed in, one thing as an artist that I believe in, I can decide how great I am and what I know, or I can listen into the universe and say, you let me know what I've created and if it's of value and if it's brilliant or what I need to work on. And in terms of energy, when we talked about earlier, I don't think that, there's billions of people on the planet, man. And this thing was created by something much greater than us, right? So how dare I think my energy is to be all and anything? How can I guide all of this, right? I have to believe that there's something I'm a part of that's larger than me. And I have to be receptive to that, right? Because there's a purpose here, right? In terms of my existence, right? In terms of my work here on this earth. Has to be bigger than me. Has to be outside of me. And the only way that I believe that I can understand that is I have to receive it. Otherwise, I decide everything, and it's whatever I want, And then it's like, I think that's a harder road. And I think it's a more dishonest way of living life. Because if it's self-serving, I don't think it's within why we were here. I don't think we're here meant to be self-serving. And that's kind of how I live my, that's kind of how I walk through life.
Yeah, dude, that's so powerful. And I look, when people that are listening right now, go back and listen to that. I think that that's really, really important to understand that there's something greater than us, and we need to lean into it. When we try and really guide our own path, we can a lot of times make it more difficult, more of a rocky road, more, you're going to have more pushback from the universe, however you want to look at that, which I love that you shared that so much. And now here you are, you just filmed a third season for Tyler Perry's hit show, on BET. What's that process been like? I mean, is this your first like big break into full-time acting?
Well, first of all, you use the word process. Process when it comes to working with Tyler Perry is that's process. We're gonna get this thing going. We're gonna get it. We're gonna no. It's extremely fast, man. So it's interesting because as an artist, we lean a lot. When I say artists, let's say because there's different degrees of artists. There's actors who are actors, and then there's actors who actually swing, and they put a lot of effort into craft and all that kind of stuff. So let me talk about the crafted actors who really put a lot of work into training. Yeah. We lean a lot on process, right? We spend all this time to develop our process and how we work and what we need to do our best work. When we move over to work with Tyler Perry, Tyler has his process and how he works. It doesn't always accommodate what we call normal situations. So there was a balancing act in terms of adjusting to how Tyler works versus how I might work normally in other situations. So it became okay, I got to remove this, I got to add this, remove this, and I got to develop a new way of working that keeps up with how Tyler does his thing. So that could be difficult. But once you find your footing in that and you accept that this is how this works here, you can find ways to be productive in that and accept it and satisfy yourself in the work. So that has been most of the journey, particularly with season one, and then figuring it out. And season one, I was just holding on. You know what I'm saying? I was it was a rocky ship, and I'm holding on to the deck, and I'm like, I can't fall off. I know the storm is coming. We're in the middle of the storm, but it made it ashore. That was season one for me. Then season two was like, okay, I know what the ship is like. I know what it's like. I know the storm is coming. I'm prepared for it. Now I got my gear. I got my boots on. I'm not gonna slide around as much. I know where to hold on. And so it became that. And then season three, you're just trying to get to a place where you're comfortable, where you're totally in. And so that's where we are. In each season we grow and we learn the process. But yeah, anybody looking to work with Tyler on his shows, just know that
hold on.
Yes, hold on for the ride and be ready. But yeah, that's what it's been like. And as far as television, it is my first series regular. Well, I've done a lot of television, guest star, recurring roles and things like that. But it's my first series regular role, so I would call that a big break.
Yeah, no, that it's incredible for sure, and I love that you're like, what I'm hearing from you is you're a lifelong student, right? Everything from going through school to college to taking your script that you wrote and handing it to people so you can learn from them, and now you talk about this trajectory with Tyler Perry in the show. Like season one, you're like, I didn't know what to expect. And I jumped in and I was like, oh crap. But by season two, you were ready. You were buckled in, right? Like you had everything ready and raring to go. And now you've become a teacher, right? And so part of this passion project that you're building is this school. And I want to hear more about it. I know you what I got it from the PR release was you cut the ribbon in January 2021. So here we are a couple months in. What's that process been like, really building out this school and helping individuals and really becoming a teacher? What's that been like? And where did that come from? Why did you want to do that?
Well, I'll start with why I want to do it. Again, I got to go back to being born and raised in Anderson, South Carolina, and then looking at who I am today. It doesn't match up, right? It doesn't match up. You don't hear a lot about, the greatest acting talent thus far to come out of Anderson, South Carolina was Chadwick Boseman, who just recently passed.
Yeah.
From the same hometown, very close friends over the years. But neither one of us can say that the state of South Carolina contributed much to where we are, or where we got to in this business. I think that's sad because it's not like we don't have a arts institution there. But we don't have enough as a state to nurture and develop people who dream to be in the entertainment industry outside of music. and outside of behind the camera. There's some good production stuff going on, but as far as in front of the camera talent, it's not there. And I remember when I first came back to South Carolina, I couldn't work. Like I couldn't, most of what people see, family see with my work is because it's on television or it's on film. The stage stuff I do, they don't see it because they can't always go and drive, get to Chicago, get to New York, get to these places where I'm able to do those type of shows. So when I got back, I said, why can't I work in my own home state? Like I can't even afford to work at your theater company. I can't afford to work on this project because I end up paying to do it. It becomes an expense to me. And I was like, that's a sad state of affairs that I'm in the industry and I come home and I got to sit here and do nothing. So I started doing a free workshop just to test the market. I was like, let me do some free workshops just to see if there's an interest. And I was getting people in their 60s who said, for the last 40 years, I've been dreaming about doing blah, 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 and never did any of it. But I've been working here at this company, living a good life with healthcare and, nice six-figure salary, living a good life, but it's not a fulfilled life because there's a void that was ignored because I had no outlet. And I said, that's sad. I think it's tragic that we can go through life and look at ourselves and say there was something that was bigger and more passionate in me. I had a story to tell and I never told it because of whatever reason. So I said, I got to create this. I'm sitting here, I'm home, and I said, I have the means, I have the experience, I have the knowledge. Let me build it. Because if I don't build it, it's not going to happen, right? If it's not me, then when would it happen? And so it became that. It was like I can't let people just sit here and not have any means. They got to feel like they got to go to Atlanta or get out of. But the pros and cons of that is a lot of people can't even afford to travel to go get it. It's not everybody's not capable. I met some people who was flying their kids back and forth to New York every weekend to get training. Well, how many people can do that?
Not many.
And some people can't go to the next town over, because they got to work. They got their situations or whatever it is. So I said, let me work on building this thing. So that became the impetus for the school and trying to develop something that you can put in I wanted to bring a pond of water to the desert and said, hey, y'all been thirsty for this. Come here and drink. And so this is what I'm creating. And hopefully long term, it goes into something that becomes nationally recognized as a hub in that southeastern area that other major cities can start coming to for new talent, new faces, and talent that is developed and qualified to be competitive in the industry. It's a little more than, we love community theater, but we're talking bigger than the community theater training. We're talking about competitive industry training. Yeah. Where you really get out there and give yourself a shot at it. So that's what's driving the whole thing. Because I want more Javon Johnson. I want more Chadwick Bosemans. I want more of these people coming out of that market. Because I at the end of the day, I say myself and Chadwick Boseman and anybody else who's come from that area who are working, but we don't really know they're from that area because they don't push that because it's not sexy to say that. Yeah. But I dare to say we're the only ones. Like there's got to be more than enough of us there that are just as talented or more talented than we are.
Yeah, and you're giving them the opportunity, man, and you're speaking my language. Like a fun fact, and you don't know this about me, but obviously I live in Reading, Pennsylvania, which 6 years ago Reading was the poorest city in America. And I live a little outside of it. I live in a town called Wyomissing, but grew up in South Jersey, moved here 16 and a half years ago. I was supposed to live here for 6 months. And I'm still here because I fell in love with the area. And now that I have this podcast with this reach and I have some great connections, I decided to bring a live event to Reading, Pennsylvania for high-end entrepreneurs. And a lot of it was to say, hey, look, Reading can do this too. And people said I was crazy. We don't have an airport. We have a private one. So like you can only fly in private jets. And that's not who's attracting my $120 ticket to my event. And so like, I was like, let me do it and see what happens. And so the first year was 2019. We had incredible speakers. But we had people come from 16 states in Canada. And then 2020 was supposed to be year two. Obviously, COVID put an end to that. But we already had people signed up for year two from 18 states in Canada. And it was one of those like, look, we can do it here too. And I wanted it to give it the nod to the city of Reading to say, number one, let's do great things here. Because people say we can't. And number two, hey, look, here's an opportunity to bring people here and show that this entire, not just me, but this entire city can create something great. So I love that vision to be able to give them something, because they can't travel. They can't get out and do the things, and I was able to work out some scholarships and get some people there that couldn't afford to be there, and, all these partnerships. And it was a really cool thing to be able to do. And so I feel your passion when you're like, there's talent here, there's opportunity, or there's talent here. We have to give them the opportunity. To open that up, man. So I absolutely love that you're doing that. And it falls right in line with everything that I see as well. Obviously different towns, right? But very similar messages. And like you said, you want it to be a hub for these things. What is your plan with the school? I'd love to hear some of your future casting and some of the things you're doing to really build that up.
Well, the school is called Bear Fruit Conservatory, right? So that's the training aspect of it, right? But I thought I went a step ahead of that, and I said, you know what? What good is to train them to then send them away?
Yeah.
Right. Training is great, right? But I also have the opportunity to do an affiliate company, which is a production company called Bear Fruit Entertainment. So now, not only am I training you, I'm actually going to help start your actual career.
Wow.
So the school is a part of that first development into your career getting started. So you come out of the school, by the time you leave the school, you graduate the program, you have a actor's reel because you've been a lead in some short film or maybe a feature film that we produced. You've either, if you're interested in doing other aspects of filmmaking, you have that experience. So you're building your resume here while you're training. So that when you decide to go to a New York or LA or whatever larger market, you're not going with your hands out. You're bringing a plate to the table. You're saying, hey, this is my dish. Can I contribute to the meal? You know what I mean? So that's the concept behind that. Because I know that, my journey has been training and then going and knocking on doors and hoping somebody will listen and give me an opportunity. But I'm in a position where I can have you come to the table with an offering as opposed to just having your hands out, which is a different dynamic. So that's part of it. And, the conservatory ultimately, it's a startup year. So we started small in terms of the curriculum. But ultimately, the long-term goal is that it covers pretty much any aspect of entertainment discipline that you're interested in, whether it's being a musician, a vocalist, an actor, a writer, a poet, a dancer. All of those things we want the school to grow into, so it becomes that center for all disciplines of entertainment, that one-stop shop place where you can go and develop your craft and learn the business of it. Things that we offer in the school is not just, because I don't think we focus enough on the mental care and the spiritual care of artists. We kind of just focus on the technique and we're training, we're teaching Meisner here, or we're teaching Stanislavski or Uta Hagen, and it all becomes about the method in the book, but it never really, sometimes we neglect the actual instrument, which is the person. And say there's an investment in that person. There's a development that needs to happen in that person. That person has a whole life that they've been dealing with. You know what I'm saying? So in my school, we offer life coaching. We offer financial literacy. So there's some atypical courses that we offer that are geared towards your personal build-up, your personal care, and how do you manage yourself in an industry that's not always nice or fair or kind. And the other part of it is you got to realize that the artist is always under direct attack, because you're always trying to sell yourself to somebody, and somebody's always saying you're not good enough, or we don't want you. You know what I mean? So how do you deal with that? Like, we don't put enough training in that. We don't put a lens on that enough to make sure people are being taken care of or know how to take care of themselves when they're facing rejection constantly. Because then you go home and say, God, what's wrong with me? Should I get bigger breasts? Should I get a smaller nose? Should I go out and drink more because that's the thing to do? Should I? But you can lose yourself in the journey. So I try to offer those courses too. To it's not just about being an actor. It's about building an artist and better human beings, so that you're better equipped in this journey to deal with a oftentimes difficult industry.
Yeah, man, that's so powerful. And I love, like I said earlier, man, I love feeling your passion, and you can see it in you, and you're somebody who's gone out there and you've created success for yourself, however you want to define success. So I want to ask you, what is your definition of success, and what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Definition of success for me, man, is if you're simply happy and satisfied with what you're doing, right? That self-satisfaction and fulfillment has to be the major part of the equation for me. Because if if I just repaired lawnmowers for my life, but preparing those lawnmowers made me happy and love to see people take a lawnmower and go groom their yard, and I contributed to that, and that fulfills me. That is success, whether I make six figures doing that or not. Because what I've bought for myself, what I've invested in, is my own happiness, and that's my responsibility. Nobody's responsible for my own personal joy, and I can't give anybody that power to make me happy. I have to make choices in my life and be accountable for my own happiness, which means that this thing you want me to do sounds great, but I really need to do this thing over here because this makes me happy. This satisfies me. I can live a good life that way. It has nothing to do with the monetary thing. Those are things that if it comes along with it, that is great. But you got to find happiness with or without the money, because life is unpredictable. It's not always there. You got your 6-figure job for the last 5 years, and then all of a sudden you get laid off, and you're like, where do I go now? Do I lose all my happiness because my happiness was tied to the 6 figures, or was it tied to something else? You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I don't care what the conditions are around me. I don't care how life shifts. My happiness should not be attached to those conditions. My happiness should be attached to, am I doing things? Am I making decisions that fulfill me? And that makes me successful regardless of what conditions I'm in. So that's how I define success for me, and how much I'm doing for other people. You know what I mean? How much of a service am I to other people is how I gauge success as well. In terms of what I do every day, I just constantly, I'm in a constant state of meditating on that. It's like just the awareness of that and the trajectory of where I want to be, the visions that I have for where I want to be, and always constantly reminding myself that don't lose a sense of that in everything that I do every day. So that's pretty much it. And then other aspects of trying to take care of your body. Make sure you're putting the right things in your body, and make sure you're feeling good about yourself, because that's a part of the equation. So if I feel unhealthy, I'm drained, I'm eating snacks, junk food all the time, or I'm not getting in the gym, and then that affects my mentality, affects my motivation. Then I'm quick to say, you know what, forget all that. I'm just gonna watch the football game and just sit here and eat these Doritos and just be satisfied with this now, because now I'm becoming content with just being a sloth or whatever it makes me feel. So taking care of your body and your mind is also a part of the process too. So that's what success is to me, man.
Dude, I love it, man. So I wrap up every single interview with the same question, but before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? How do they check out your show? What's all the good information?
My website is www.javonjohnson.net. You can get information about the school at www.bearfruitsc.com, and Bear is BEAR. .com. And also I'm on Instagram, the social media networks, outlets. Instagram is Javon Johnson and the number 1. If you can find me there on Instagram as well.
Awesome, man. I love it. Like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, my question for you is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Oh, man. It's kind of hard to get away from becoming a father. Holding babies in your arms. You know what I mean? I had a set of twins, and I remember accepting an award in Chicago and holding my twins in my arms. Like moments like that, it's like this growth in those things, man. It just makes it all worthwhile. You know what I mean? So that's probably the biggest thing, because it changes the palette of what's at stake. When you have a whole life that you've created, part of creating it, and you're responsible for that, what the future looks like, what are you building for that, so I think and I'm still in that growth, constantly.
So I'll say this, I don't have my own kids, but I am the bonus dad of 2 children. And I don't know how old your kids are. How old are they?
Yeah, the twins are 19, my daughter is 16.
Okay, so that there's growth at every age, right? So right now, the 2 kids that we have here are 10 and 7, and I'm learning every single day, man. Like, the growth is so real when it comes to being in that role, and I fail most days, but I try my best. But honestly, Javon, I've loved every second of this conversation, man. I love what you're doing in the world. Please keep doing it. If there's everything there's ever anything I can do to help you out, please don't hesitate, man. This has been phenomenal. So thank you so much.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.